are you doing?
Infusing cinnamon into the cab. Why? Does it look illegal?
It looks something. I thought you were summoning spirits.
Just the good ones.
Why is she looking at me like that? That was the thought racing through my mind as Denise froze, her eyes locked on the glass her daughter had just sipped from. Her face drained of color. Her breath caught. And in that moment, I knew whatever she had planned for me was now flowing through Tasha instead. The room felt colder, heavier, as secrets long hidden clawed their way into the light. This wasn't just a family misunderstanding. It was something darker, something tied to the resentment she'd carried from day one. This is the story of the drink meant for me. Welcome story lovers, from where are you watching? Hit the like button and drop your city name in the comments so we can see how far our story travels. My life changed the moment my father remarried. Though back then, I didn't see the storm quietly forming around us. I was 17, caught in that awkward space between childhood and adulthood, and still trying to understand what family meant after losing my mother. My father's new wife, Denise, entered our lives just 6 months after he met her at a charity event. She moved into our home with a kind of confidence that filled every room, always dressed in immaculate outfits, always speaking with a sharpness that made you wonder whether she was complimenting you or cutting you down. I tried to be open-minded. I wanted to believe that this new chapter could bring peace to my father, who had spent years shouldering grief alone. But something about Denise never settled right with me. She studied me in a way that felt more like assessment than care, as if deciding whether I deserved to be part of the life she envisioned. Her daughter Tasha was the opposite, quiet, observant, and always walking softly, like she'd learned long ago that being invisible was safer. Our home, once lively and warm, became meticulously organized and eerily silent. Denise insisted on certain routines: dinners exactly at 7, no snacks between meals, and no closed doors unless asleep. She said structure built discipline, but it felt more like control. My father didn't notice these shifts, blinded by the relief of companionship after years of loneliness. Still, I adapted. I spent more time studying, more time outside, less time arguing about changes I couldn't stop. Yet, beneath the surface of my compliance, a tension brewed like the air before a thunderstorm. I sensed she didn't like me, but I couldn't understand why. I sensed she didn't trust me, though I'd done nothing to earn suspicion. And each day, her eyes lingered a little longer, colder, sharper, as if she was waiting for the right moment to reveal a side of herself no one else ever saw. I didn't realize then that the moment was coming faster than I thought. And when it arrived, it would come disguised as something as simple and as dangerous. It's a glass of juice at the dinner table. It happened on a warm Saturday afternoon, one of those days that made our neighborhood feel almost peaceful. My father had gone to a community event, leaving me alone with Denise and Tasha. I'd planned to spend the day quietly, maybe catching up on homework or cleaning my room. But Denise insisted we prepare a family lunch. Her tone made it sound less like an invitation and more like an order. The kitchen smelled of citrus and spices as she moved around with practiced precision. I tried helping, but she nudged me aside with a tight smile, telling me I'd only get in the way. So I sat at the counter, watching her movements, too quick, too deliberate. Every so often, she glanced at me, her expression unreadable. When the food was ready, she placed 3 glasses on the table, tall, chilled, filled with a bright orange drink. It looked refreshing, but the moment she set mine down, something in her posture shifted. It was subtle but unmistakable. A tension in her shoulders, a flicker in her eyes, like she was holding her breath. I'd always been observant. Growing up in a blended family required it. So when Denise nudged Tasha to sit on the opposite side of me, when she placed her own glass slightly farther from mine, when her gaze repeatedly returned to my drink, I noticed. But I stayed silent. We began eating, the room quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Denise barely touched her plate, her gaze fixed on me. That's when the unease intensified, almost prickling against my skin. I looked down into my glass again, noticing how the liquid seemed slightly cloudier than usual, almost like something had been stirred in too quickly. Tasha kept glancing at her mother, then at me. Her fingers trembled as she lifted her fork, and her eyes lingered on my drink with something close to fear. That was the moment everything clicked. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And Denise was waiting for me to drink it. I didn't know what was in the glass, maybe nothing more than a digestive aid. Maybe something far worse, but my instincts screamed at me not to risk it. I needed to act without alerting her. So I pretended to stand, mumbling something about grabbing my phone from the counter. As I did, I subtly moved my glass in front of Tasha's seat and placed hers where mine had been. A simple switch. Silent, undetectable. When I sat back down, Denise's eyes narrowed. Her lips parted slightly, as if she sensed something had changed, but couldn't quite identify what. "Go on," she said softly, her voice velvet over steel. "Drink before it gets warm." Tasha's face paled. Her gaze darted between the glasses, then back to her mother. Her breathing quickening. I pretended not to notice and lifted her glass to my lips. But just before I drank, I paused, pretending to cough. Denise flinched. Actually flinched. That's when Tasha grabbed the other glass, my glass, and without thinking, took a sip. Denise's reaction was instant. Her eyes widened. Her fork clattered from her hand. Color drained from her face. And in that split second, I realized the truth. The drink wasn't meant to refresh me. It was meant to harm me. And now, her daughter had just swallowed it. The glass thudded softly as Tasha placed it back onto the table. She blinked, confused, running her tongue across her lips as if the taste was unfamiliar. Denise shot to her feet so quickly, her chair toppled backward, her breath sharp and uneven. The fear in her eyes, raw, unfiltered, confirmed every suspicion I'd been too afraid to name. "Tasha, don't," she choked out, but it was too late. Tasha's hand shook. She pressed her fingers to her throat, swallowing hard. Something wasn't right. Her skin reddened, her breathing turning shallow, uneven. A wave of dizziness washed over her, and she leaned forward. Bracing herself on the table, I stood frozen, horror rooting me in place. The room felt smaller, darker, as if the truth itself had weight. Denise lunged toward her daughter, knocking aside the plates, her voice rising in frantic whispers. Everything felt unreal, like watching a nightmare unfold in slow motion. She tried to steady Tasha, but panic made her movements clumsy. "It wasn't supposed to be you," she whispered, agony stretching each word. "It wasn't supposed to be you." Her confession didn't surprise me. Not after months of hostility, subtle digs, the sharpness behind her smiles. But hearing it aloud, admitting intent to harm shifted everything. This wasn't mere dislike. This was malice. Tasha slumped against her mother, eyes fluttering. Denise turned toward me, something desperate and dangerous flickering in her gaze. For the first time, she looked stripped of all control. And in that moment, as sirens wailed distantly in the neighborhood, I realized this wasn't just the breaking point of our fractured family. It was the shattering of the truth Denise had tried so hard to maintain. Dear audience, where are you watching from? Drop your city name in the comments. The ambulance arrived quickly, its flashing lights painting our living room in waves of red and white. Tasha was rushed out on a stretcher, conscious but weak, her breathing stabilized by the paramedics. Denise tried following them, but the police held her back, asking questions she couldn't answer without unraveling her own lies. My father arrived minutes later, shock carving deep lines into his face as I recounted everything. The switch, the fear, the confession whispered in desperation. Tasha survived. She later told authorities she had long suspected her mother's resentment toward me, but she never imagined it could escalate into something so dangerous. I didn't blame her. Children shouldn't have to bear the weight of their parents' darkness. Denise was arrested. The truth about her actions and the prejudice fueling them came to light during the investigation. It wasn't just personal hatred. It was a deep-seated resentment tangled in layers of bias, insecurity, and the twisted belief that I didn't belong in the family she wanted to build. The ordeal left scars, emotional ones that shaped how I viewed trust, safety, and the subtle ways racism can hide behind polite smiles. But it also strengthened my relationship with my father, and my bond with Tasha grew into something unbreakable. In the end, this story wasn't just about a glass of juice or a dangerous decision made in secret. It was a reminder that racism doesn't always shout, it often whispers, disguised as judgment, resentment, or quiet exclusion. And the question I still ask is this: how many more quiet dangers go unseen until it's almost too late? Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more powerful stories and new videos.